The matter of ancestor worship, or its accomplice in superstition, the creation of icons, is a subject that many civilizations seem to find attractive. A friend of mine whose hair turned gray at an early age and was snow white by the time he was 55 told me once that when he was on a business trip to Japan, people stepped aside as he walked down the street and often bowed deeply as he passed. He knew none of these people, and when he asked a Japanese associate about the practice, he was informed that the passers-by were impressed with his great age. Evidently something in the Japanese gene makeup does not let gray hair begin early, as sometimes happens to the offspring of the Anglo-Saxon hill tribes, and Japanese people associate white hair with extreme age and therefore with extreme wisdom. In the case of the individual just noticed, the Japanese have made a grave error, my friend not only being dumb but also aggressive, two qualities that do not go together at all, and if he is the possessor of any wisdom, he has managed to hide it throughout the whole of the time I have known him. Just a few years ago, on the occasion of my first trip to Ireland, several people in the course of a 2-day visit to Dublin stopped me on the street. I knew none of these people, but every one of them asked if it would be all right if he touched me. I asked the tour guide if he knew the reason for these requests, and he said the Irish do it for luck. I am lucky. I have been all my life, but I was not aware that it showed. And if strangers in Ireland, who neither knew my name nor where I came from, could detect it at a glance, they live in a strange world indeed. I know that the Irish, probably due to their having suffered a couple of centuries of Viking raids, tend to be suspicious of blondes, and I had black hair at the time. The color of my eyes is identical to the color of stagnant water standing in cow tracks in the river swamp, which mitigates against my being of Mediterranean origin. But the automatic association of black hair and light-colored eyes with luck leaves me completely out of the thought processes of these passing Irishmen. It is also my considered opinion that years and white hair do not always indicate wisdom, although they may, but they do indicate that the person so distinguished may be lucky as well because he has managed to escape a lot of the things that tend to kill off some of us early on. There are other societies who have an undue reverence for age beside the Japanese, and this deference to age still exists as a prominent characteristic among sporting circles in the southern part of the United States. I have been watching this tendency to deify elderly hunters for many years, and there appears to be no rational explanation for such elevation to sainthood except the one of ancestor worship. Old hunters and fishermen appear to take the place of those members of our family who have gone before us, sort of like surrogate great-grandfathers. Almost none of these objects of deification seek to position. It appears that if a potential subject begins to act as if it were his right to be so elevated, the mere fact of that expectation nullifies the process. Some of the potentials elevatees even try to hide their excellence. They joke about it, they deprecate the matter, they may even go out of their way to hide certain skills, even though these skills eventually bubble to the surface. But even the ones that try to hide the skill, the ones that go so far as to admit to incompetent acts they did not commit, all of them I have ever met possess one single overriding characteristic. Every last one of them wants the dice, will shove you out of the way to get them, and feels perfectly confident of rolling his point after he gets them in his hands. Most of the time these icons perform as expected, but every once in a while, naturally, one of them strikes out with the bases loaded because no one is infallible. But on rare occasions, an individual goes O for St. Louis, followed by O for Atlanta, and does it in city after city all season long. If you happen to be present at such a string of failures, especially if the subject has been elevated to such a position that he has become an icon of turkey hunting, the results are almost too painful to contemplate. What I'm in the process of discussing is the fact that occasionally one of these icons, one of those people who in effect have no peers but only admirers, goes through a complete spring season in southwest Alabama and never cuts a fellow. Those of you who came into the league in the last 15 years or so have got to have your tongues permanently affixed to the insides of your cheeks at this point, because it must appear to you that you have just read an impossibility. There ain't no way a good turkey hunter could go through an entire season without at least picking up a couple. Even if he were a professional guide who had to spend every day of his season guiding one or another of a series of bumbling incompetents, he would have called up at least one or two for the client to miss.